Right, at this stage we're going to start painting the doors. We've got tools and equipment here. Now, the scissors are there purely and simply to cut the sandpaper with. I know a lot comes in sheets. We tend to get it in a roll form. Now, sandpaper comes in different thicknesses. This is a 40 grade and it's very, very rough. You do struggle. So if you've got anything really rough to rip down, it's great to start with a 40 grade. This, on the other hand, is 120 and it's quite smooth. It's going to give us a nice thing. All we're trying to do now with this door is take off any nibs and create a key to work to. Now, what we do with the sandpaper is we fold it into three. I like to use the scissors because it gives us a clean edge to cut it off, but you can use your scrapers. We're going to cut a sandpaper. We don't want too big a piece, because if we've got too big a piece it becomes clumsy on something like this. And we're going to fold it into three. Why do painters always fold the sandpaper into three? There's two reasons you'll see decorators and painters folding sandpaper into three. One, it stops it sliding, and two, you've always got your clean edge. So once it's folded, it's going to go into my pouch. I've got that. In my pouch I've also got a dust brush. We're going to, obviously once we've sanded, we're going to dust the door down. We've got a paint kettle. I like to use plastic ones, they're quite easy to maintain. Metal ones have got their advantages. Metal ones you can burn out and they have got their advantages. But the plastic ones are quite cheap and they're quite easy to dispose. Once they break, you know, they're quite easy to replace. The brush, now, our standards require us to paint the doors with a 2-inch brush usually, so we will be using a 2-inch brush. You want something with a nice bristle, something quite flexible with a nice bristle, so that's the brush we're going to use. The lining paper I'm not going to use at this stage, but we do tend to recycle where we can, and a dust sheet is always a good idea. As we work and show you how to work, you're going to say, well, we don't need dust sheets, we work cleanly and tidily. Yes, we try to at all times. The dust sheet is there as a last resort. If something fails or goes wrong, we want something there as a last resort. We will show you how to work cleanly and tidily, and hopefully that's going to be the way forward. But if something goes wrong, yes, we do want that dust sheet there. Now, the other problem we're going to come across is a dust sheet takes quite a bit of space up. And when you're trying to sheet a door up normally, we're quite lucky with this one because it does come off the floor the way it's been fitted for us, but this is fitted purely for training purposes. Normally it will go flat to the floor. The thickness of the dust sheet would take up the bottom set of this door and makes it difficult then to start cutting in. So what we tend to do, just slide a bit of lining paper underneath it. Works perfectly. There's always enough room to get that bit of lining paper under the door, and you've got your backup for your surrounding area. So that's as lining paper taken care of. We're going to be wood graining these doors, so we're going to use an acrylic eggshell. It's water based, it's got very, very minimal with fumes and it's quick drying, so it's quite good for us, and it serves a purpose in this particular instance. Whatever finish you're using, the principle of painting the door is going to be the same. We want something to open a tin with and a stirring stick. We also want a screwdriver. Now, it's good practice when you come to a door to take off any furniture. I personally like to cut things in. I don't like to be taking furniture off. I do find it has its cutbacks and its drawbacks. Some people start playing with masking tape, and by the time they've masked it up and took the masking tape off, if they don't mask it up properly, it becomes a bit of a mess. I find it easier to actually cut the door handle in, because the time it takes me to mask that up properly, I can have cut it in. But the correct procedure, and remember we go back to the basics every time, is to take that door handle off. So we are going to take that door handle off. This one's on with a Phillips screwdriver. Now, I don't want to lose this handle, so I'm going to put it in my pouch along with the screws. it's so easy to put it down and somebody comes along and kicks it or puts it somewhere, and then when you come in you've got a screw missing. So what we now need to be very careful of is we haven't got a handle on this door. So if it shuts, we can't open it again. We've just used a screwdriver. We can use the screwdriver and just put it inside. That will stop us the door shutting. Or we can use a scraper. We've always got a scraper handy. So they're the options, but that's going to stop that door shutting for us, because if we haven't got the handle on, we don't want the door shutting. We're now going to start sanding that door down. We've got a sandpaper. Remember, we folded it into 3, and the reason we folded it into 3 was so it was going to be solid. When we're sanding down, we don't want to be over-exaggerating what we do. We look at first the reason we're sanding it down. Are there any nibs? Are there any rough parts on that door? We're after a key for our paint to stick. It's going to adhere to that. So we're wanting a key on this door. If it's a good door, it doesn't take a lot of sanding down. First thing we're going to do is the edge. Now, the best way to know if you've sanded it down right is use your fingers. If you've sanded it down right, you'll feel it straight away. If you haven't sanded it down right, you'll feel the nibs. So, I'm going to sand it. And I'm always sanding, if you notice, in the direction the wood grain would go. So, the panels. Now, and the other reason why I've only got a small section of sandpaper is when I come to this section, what I call the beadings, I need to be able to get in there. If there's something there and I can't get in with sandpaper, then I'm not going to get it off. I'm using my fingers. Now, I do write numbers on the doors. It's purely for a training purpose. Obviously, when you're painting the door, we don't want you writing numbers on in front of a customer. We're not painting to numbers. I'm doing it for the training purposes, and I'm doing it because we do have an awarding body, and the awarding body's questions require the answers. I just find it's easier if somebody's seen it, they remember it, and then when they get that question, oh, how did we paint that door? Those numbers might just click away, and they'll see something what looks familiar, and it usually works. It usually gets our learners through. So it doesn't have to be a tedious job sanding the door down. It's only ever going to be as difficult or as hard as you make it. We also want to have a bit of fun in his work. We don't want to be serious all the time. So the easier and more confident your job gets, the more fun you'll start having. If you look like you're struggling with something, it will get picked up very quickly, especially by the other trades. It can be a great place to work on a site, but people can also be very, very vindictive, and, they can wind you up. And if they see you've got a weak point, they'll get it, because that's what they do. We wind joiners up, we wind electricians, plumbers, we wind them all up, and they return the favour. So if they see something we're doing wrong, they'll have us. If we see something they're doing wrong, we'll return that favour. And that's how it works. That's how life needs to be. The more fun you have, the happier you are doing your job, the quicker the day goes, and the atmosphere becomes quite fun. You actually start looking forward to going to work. I'm using my dust brush. Now, you'll probably listen to people and they'll be saying, what about these tack rags? They call them tacky rags, tack rags. Now, I have got a tack rag with me. Now, I'm going to use it. Now, we would normally use them for level 3 learners. A tack rag is a piece of cloth, and it feels like it's got a bit of oil on it. And what it does is it starts where the dust brush stops. And if we're going after a quality finish and a top quality finish, we would use this tack rag. And what we do is we're literally going to rub the door down now, following on from the dust brush. This would come in normally at level 3. At level 2, it will be quite sufficient to use your dust brush, as long as you're doing it properly. But a good tip is always use your fingers, always use your hand. You'll feel anything on that door if you use your hand. If there's anything at all on that hand, you'll feel it. So, this door now is prepared and ready to paint. So his next job will be to start painting the door.